All right, welcome to The Explainer. Tensions in the Middle East, they've just hit a whole new level after an alleged Israeli strike on Iran. And believe me, the whole world is watching. So let's get right into it and break down what's going on. So what kicked all this off? Well, back in late February, reports started flooding in about explosions in Iran. And these weren't just anywhere. They were happening shockingly close to the offices of the supreme leader. It was pretty quickly declared a preemptive strike by Israel. And get this, they reportedly had logistical and material support from the United States. Okay, so you've got Israel declaring a state of emergency, bracing for what they assume is coming next, retaliation. You can just feel the tension ratcheting up to a boiling point. It really makes you wonder, right? What's really at the heart of all this? And maybe more importantly, where does this all go from here?
So to really get a grip on what's happening now, we've got to rewind a bit. We have to look at the one issue that's been the elephant in the room for years, and that's Iran's nuclear program. It's really the core issue, the trigger point that's kept everyone on edge.
And when you look at it, you see two sides that are just dug in, with completely opposite views. You've got the United States and its ally Israel, who are absolutely determined to make sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, period. But then you have Iran, who points to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which, by the way, they signed, and says, hey, we have every right to develop nuclear power for peaceful stuff like energy and medicine.
So how has the U.S. tried to get its way? Well, they've used this strategy they call a maximum pressure policy. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. The idea is to hit Iran with absolutely crippling economic sanctions. The goal, squeeze their economy so hard that they're basically forced to come to the negotiating table and on American terms.
You know, it's easy to forget, but it wasn't always this tense. There was actually a moment, a brief window, where there was a real path to calm things down. And that was the landmark 2015 nuclear deal.
Yeah, the JCPOA, or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The deal itself was pretty straightforward, really. It was basically this. Iran agreed to seriously scale back its sensitive nuclear work and let international inspectors have a look around. And in exchange for that, the big world powers, including the US, would lift all those crushing economic sanctions.
And this chart here, it really shows you what we're talking about. Look, to build a nuclear bomb, you need to enrich uranium to around 90%. But under that JCPOA deal, Iran agreed to keep its enrichment capped way down at 3.67%. Now that's enough to run a power plant, but it's not even in the same ballpark as weapons grade. It was a clear, solid line in the sand, specifically designed to make sure a bomb wasn't on the table. But then, 2018 happened, and the whole thing just fell apart. The Trump administration decided to pull the U.S. out of the deal, all on its own, and slapped all the old sanctions right back on, plus some new ones for good measure. So what did Iran do? They responded by basically tearing up the deal themselves, and they started ramping up their uranium enrichment to turn the pressure right back around on the West.
And when I say ramping up, I really mean it. Iran started enriching uranium all the way up to 60%. Now, if you remember that chart we just looked at, that is uncomfortably close to the 90% you need for a weapon. It was such a big deal that experts were pointing out that, hey, no other country without nuclear weapons is known to have uranium enriched that high. That's a huge red flag.
Okay, so it's easy to look at this and think, well, that's a regional issue, it's happening over there. But the truth is, the shockwaves from this standoff could literally be felt all over the world. We're talking about an impact on economies and security everywhere. And let's be clear, first things first, there's the awful human cost. In any kind of escalation, civilian casualties are pretty much a given, which is just tragic. But beyond that, the economic fallout could be absolutely massive. A bigger war could mess with global shipping, send oil prices through the roof, and maybe even kick off a global recession as everyone scrambles to deal with it. And this right here, this shows you exactly why the economic threat is so real. Look where Iran is on the map. It's sitting right next to the Strait of Hormuz. Think of it like a tiny bottleneck that a huge chunk of the world's energy supply has to squeeze through. It's an absolutely vital artery for the global oil trade. Want some perspective? Let's take a huge global economy like India. A whopping 40% of all the crude oil they import has to pass through that one little strait. So yeah, if anything happens there, they feel it instantly.
And the numbers are just staggering. For every single dollar that the price of oil goes up, India's import bill for the year shoots up by $2 billion. That kicks off inflation, it weakens their currency, it can shake their whole economy. Now just stop and think about that same effect hitting dozens of other countries all at the same time.
So with everything being so unpredictable, what would a bigger war even look like? Well, if we look at recent history as our guide, a massive ground invasion, boots on the ground, is probably off the table. The political price, not to mention the human cost, is just seen as way too high.
What's much more likely is a strategy built around aerial bombardment. The idea would be to hit and destroy key targets, especially Iran's nuclear sites, from the air. You try to cripple their program and weaken the government, all without having to send in ground troops.
But, and this is a big but, history has some pretty stark warnings for us about that exact strategy. Just look at Iraq. Taking out Saddam Hussein didn't create a stable democracy, did it? It created a massive power vacuum which led to a brutal insurgency and years of conflict. Then there's Syria, where outside attacks just shattered the country even more. And of course, Afghanistan, where after 20 years of intervention, the Taliban still came back to power.
So here's the key takeaway, the big lesson from all those conflicts. It's kind of ironic, actually. Instead of weakening a regime, these kinds of external attacks often do the exact opposite. They can actually strengthen a hardline government because it gives them the perfect excuse to rally everyone against a common enemy. It fires up nationalism and completely silences anyone calling for moderation.
And that brings us to the final, really crucial question here. Looking back, history seems to be telling us pretty clearly that these kinds of military interventions almost never create the stable outcomes the planners hope for. It's a powerful reminder that the results of war are messy, they're unpredictable, and so often they're far, far more dangerous than anyone ever imagines.